Hey, Beau, what is the difference between who a person is and what they do?
It's a it's a really good question, very important question. And I'm in Milan today, preparing for a meeting with one of the major fashion houses, which I'm really excited about. And so I've come to a park in the middle of this wonderful city, and it's a really quite warm day, a bit muggy, to think about what is the difference between what we do and who we are. Often when we ask this question, people are often thinking about what you do in terms of what you do to make money. Well, what's that kind of interesting about that is that different professions tend to draw certain kinds of people. Acting profession tends to draw extroverted people. Accountancy draws a different one. Lawyers draws another. So there is a relationship between personality type and the occupations that we do. But I'd like to think more deeply, more generally about this concept of doing and the relationship between who we are and what we do. And that has to do with the relationship between what we say and what we do, our words and our actions. Now, in my experience, and I'm sure in the experience of your life, words are actually quite easy in some sense, not always, but we kind of all know what we're supposed to say. What really differentiates people is not their intentions necessarily, it's the actions that follow from those intentions. Now, having good intentions is very important, but if those intentions don't follow with action, then those intentions can actually become negative in your life. Your brain is constantly looking for maybe an alignment between words, intentions, and actions. And I would argue it's the actions, it's what we do that actually defines us. And I think this is particularly true when it comes to when times are hard, when things are very difficult. When times are easy, in some sense, you could argue there is very little free will there, because what are you going to do when things are going really well? Well, you're going to continue to do what you did before. There's very little choice in that, unless you're a nihilist. But it's when things are very difficult that we actually, I think, have far more freedom and choice. Why? Because when things are difficult, we can often go to a reflexive response. We can go to anger, we can go to frustration, hate, jealousy. And those are very natural. They've evolved for a reason. They can be very useful in a certain context. But it's also in that moment that you can choose to not look at the obvious, but to engage your prefrontal cortex and look away from the obvious, to look away from your reflexive responses, to look away from anger or frustration or hate. And as I say to my gremlins, and I truly believe, that it's in those moments that you don't just reveal who you are, you also have the possibility of creating who you are. Why? Because what you do now, the choices you make now, the possibility of looking away from the obvious will become part of your future past. And if you've listened to the different things that myself and Lavinus have said, everything that you perceive now is grounded in that history. It's not the history of what something turned out to be, it's the history of the past meaning of that. It's the history of your past engagement to the world, of your behavior, of what you do. So what you do now will shape who you will become in the future, because your future self will look back on this action and that will become part of your history. So yes, I think there's a very strong relationship between what you do in the sense of your actions, how you respond to a situation, and who you are. More than that, I would say that those actions actually can come to define who you are, and you have a choice in that. And this is one of the reasons why your prefrontal cortex evolved. It's to be able to inhibit, to look away from the more reflexive, limbic, reptilian part of your actions, which are also important for survival, but they're not always optimal in certain contexts. So the answer to the question is, yes, you are what you do.